Hey guys, it's Sign here with HobbiesofaMan once again, and today we are doing another Fantastic Four review. Today we're looking at Fantastic Four Full Circle. As recording this, it's Monday the 21st. I managed to secure some screening tickets for myself and some friends for the 23rd, so I'll get to watch the movie a few days early, which is awesome, but I probably won't do a review for it until the day that it actually comes out, which is the 25th, right? And I wanted to talk about Fantastic Four on the channel. I did already do a review of the Marvel Penguin Classics Collection version of the Fantastic Four, and today we're looking at Full Circle here. So this is by Alex Ross. It has work here by Josh Johnson as well. He does coloring for Alex Ross, and Adriana Mayer is in charge of the letters in this book. And this is published by Abrams Comic Art. It's not actually published by Marvel, as you guys can see right there, although Marvel's name is all over this thing. But I'm not really sure why this collaboration was done. I just know that it exists. And there's a few different versions of this that you can pick up. So there's this one, there's the original printing of it that had a slipcase, and then there is a deluxe edition that's really, really nice. It's actually $38 on Amazon right now, which is about half price. And if you pick this story up, I recommend you pick that one up, because I think that the oversize would really make it pop and make it really worth it. I think Uncanny Omar has done a video about it, so if you want to know what the difference between this and that edition is, you guys should go check out his channel. I'll leave a link to it down below, actually. And the demographic for this book, I guess, is a teen plus, basically the same as every other comic book, but I'm not really sure that any teenagers would really find this all that enjoyable. First of all, I don't know that many teenagers that are interested in Fantastic Four. I feel like Fantastic Four is definitely more of a 20-year-old and up kind of title. Like, I don't think kids are that interested in the family dynamic thing of the Fantastic Four, but I mean, I could be wrong, right? And the story is not really action-packed in the battle sense. This is more like a daring do kind of adventure, right? So it's really sciencey. They go do stuff, and it has a lot of similarities to the older original stuff that we see from Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. So really recommend it. It's really fun. I just don't know that teens necessarily would like this that much, right? The genre is sci-fi and superhero, of course, but like I said, it's also an adventure comic. It does not have an adaptation, although this would be a great adaptation for a movie. I don't necessarily think it would be the whole movie, but it would be a pretty good special presentation or whatever, just a one-off episode where they go do this adventure, right? And the rating for this, for me, was a 4.5 out of 5. I think it's nearly perfect, but there's some bits here and there that I didn't really quite love, and mostly has to do with the lack of action in the story, if that makes sense. So the premise here is that we're picking up a story thread from issue 51 of the Fantastic Four of the original run. This was, I think it was called This Man, This Monster. It was a story about the Thing, about Ben Grimm, where a man who looked kind of like Ben Grimm took on his appearance, and then ended up going with Reed into the negative zone and ultimately sacrificing himself because he realized that Reed was a good man, right? And he gets trapped in the negative zone, and somehow he ends up coming back in this issue. And then this leads to the Fantastic Four having to go down there to see if they can track down what's going on, because something weird happened, right? And so that's kind of the basic premise here. The plot actually opens up very nicely with that hooded man showing up, as you guys can see right there. And then we see Ben kind of just hanging out in the mansion, making himself some food, when Johnny shows up and makes fun of him and scares the Thing, and so forces him to drop his food on the floor. He's very angry about this fact, but it is what it is. They're just kind of messing around, joshing around, and then suddenly the intruder alarm goes off, and this is when everyone shows up to see what's going on. And Sue happens to not be wearing any clothes, so she's basically invisible for the most of the time, for most of the parts of the story. And it turns out that is because her and Reed were, being adults in their room, and Johnny's like, ew, that's nasty, but it happens, right? And they catch the intruder. Turns out it was that guy from issue 51. I can't remember his name, but it seems like he has died. He did everything in his power to get here. Now that he's here, he's dead. He lost his will to live, basically. And as they're examining his body, something weird starts to crawl out of it. It's these negative zone bugs, right? And there's just too many of them. And Johnny tries to kill them all by using his fire. Then Sue tries to catch them all with her psychic barrier thingies. And nothing works just because there's just so many of them, right? Johnny can't burn them. Sue can't hold them. And the Thing and Reed don't really have any specific attacks that can help them against them, right? And so Reed, in a desperate move, kind of calls out to the Baxter Building AI. He runs a command through it, and then it just zaps everything that is not keyed into its system, right? And so they zap all the bugs. Then the boys are regrouping. They're kind of cleaning their office or their building. And as they do this, Sue comes back donning her full costume, and she's like, this is like a job for the Fantastic Four. What are we going to do? And so Reed tells them, we got to go to the negative zone. We got to see what's going on down there. And so he provides them these new suits that are kind of nice and silvery and shiny, which is really fun. And then they enter the negative zone. We see this really awesome work here to kind of try its best to look like the stuff that Kirby did, which was this really interesting kind of like collage effect that they used to do. So here you go. Really awesome stuff there as they go into the negative zone. And once they're there, they manage to arrive at a very specific location, which seems to be where Annihilus lives. Annihilus being another one of their big bad guys. And they manage to sneak past him, and they're able to bypass him when they suddenly get attacked. And they get attacked by this weird nightmare situation. And it turns out that it's Janus, named after the Two-Faced God, but also a guy that used to know Reed back in college, who ended up becoming the Nega Man, the Negative Man. And he somehow lives here, and he's using his powers to give these crazy, like, abomination nightmare things to our characters, right? And as this is happening, Annihilus wakes up, and he shows up, and then he gets blasted by Johnny. And as he does this, they manage to force him to fight the Nega Man for a while, and they manage to try to escape. Turns out that they didn't escape well enough, and so Janus comes back and grabs them, and then in a kind of interesting situation, he flings them to an Earth, or a planet. And it turns out that it's an anti-Earth, and the characters manage to avoid crashing into it, but do end up kind of deciding, you know, what should we do? Should we go back home, or should we go down in there? And Reed has an interest, a scientific interest in this planet, and so he manages to convince everyone to go down there with him. And even though no one really wants to, they work together to actually force an entry into the planet. And they do so, and it's really cool. It looks really awesome. A bit of action, daring do kind of drawings there from Alex Ross. And then a bunch of people show up to try to, you know, stop them from entering when they start yelling in English, and a guy seems to recognize the language, and it turns out that it's this man who looks kind of like an Iron Man character, takes off his helmet, and it turns out that it was that guy from issue 51. And he lives in this suit because his interaction with the negative zone led him to become this ephemeral, ethereal, like blue will-o-wisp thing that is only contained by the suit. And so he doesn't really have a real body. He just kind of exists as energy within the suit, right? And so Reed, using his special suit, manages to cut off a piece of it and forge it into an outfit for this man. And so now this man has a body again. And this provides our characters a Fantastic Four goodwill from the people that live there, who are very appreciative of this because they find this character from issue 51 to be a meaningful member of their society, right? And so since they bought themselves some goodwill with Reed helping him, these people decided that they were going to help them send the Fantastic Four back to Earth, right? And so they managed to transfer themselves back, and they have some fun, getting back into the swing of things. And then Reed talks about the fact that he's curious about reality and how the negative zone seems to be powered by the way in which people think and the way that people develop their thought processes, right? And so he thinks that there might be some sort of psychoactive element to the negative zone, right? It's not really all that important. It's just a fun kind of realization that he comes to at the end. to justify why they went in there, right? And it's a really good story. I really enjoyed it. It's not necessarily the greatest thing ever. Like, there's not enough conflict for it to be like a proper story. It's just kind of like a small adventure that they go through, right? But it's not really like they have a character arc. It's more like Alex Ross was reading through the Fantastic Four and he was like, oh, what the hell happened to that guy, right? And then he wrote a little short story to explain it. And then he was like, well, maybe Marvel will let me publish this, right? I don't know if that's how it happened, but that's just kind of what it seems like, right? Like, is it a two-part story with that issue? Yeah, sort of. But it's not necessarily it's not necessarily a proper story, if that makes sense. It's just kind of like a fun tidbit of extra lore that you can consume if you want to. However, the way that it's drawn, just because it's by Alex Ross, is amazing. And the styling and the thought and care that went into making it is phenomenal. And it is worth picking up for that, reason. But it's not necessarily worth picking up for the story aspect, right? Like, if you're looking for something really special from the Fantastic Four, this might not really be it in terms of story, but it definitely is in terms of artwork, right? So, if that makes sense or not, that's up to you. But that's kind of what I thought while reading this. And so it's enjoyable. I really liked it. I do want to buy that other version just because I think the artwork will look phenomenal. But it's not necessarily something that I'm rushing to get because it's not like the story is that special to me, right? So if that makes sense, I hope it does. So the characters here are Reed, Ben Grimm, Johnny and Sue Storm, the guy from issue 51, Annihilus, Janice, and some of the people that we see in the Anti-Earth, but they don't have names. They're not really that important. There's really no change for Ben Grimm, Johnny, or Sue Storm. Reed, I guess, develops some sense of relief from knowing that man that died in the negative zone didn't die, that he's flourishing, but it's not necessarily all that special. And I guess Ben Grimm was angry at this guy, and then he was like, oh, well, he's dead, so there's no point in being angry. And now that he's alive, he's like, oh, well, good for you for finding yourselves, right? And there's also kind of a funny, like, parallel because Ben Grimm is a monster of physical, presence, and this guy's a monster of ethereal presence, right? So they're kind of the same but opposite in a way. But it's not like Ben is like deeply affected by this or anything. It's just an interesting kind of parallel there. And in terms of world building, there really isn't anything new that we haven't seen before in the Fantastic Four. We saw the Anti-Earth, we saw the Negative Zone, we saw some new suits, which is kind of new, but it's not really all that special. I mean, I feel like at some point or another, Reed has made a bunch of different suits or a bunch of different, things for the suits that would make them, impervious to the negative zone or whatever, right? So it's not anything new specifically, but it is kind of fun to see, right? Artwork and fan service wise, the artwork here is amazing. There's no fan service in the anime sense, like there's no, adult content or anything, but there's a lot of fan service in terms of like callbacks and Easter eggs and stuff like that. In the book, I don't get most of them, but I know that they exist because I've seen reviews of the deluxe edition that mention this, right? So if you're a big Fantastic Four fan, you might have a lot of fun finding those. I didn't really see many of them, but they exist, right? In terms of rating, 4.5 out of 5. I think that the story is nearly perfect, but it needs a bit more. It needs to expand itself a little bit more. I think that the story needed a bigger, more direct conflict with a character, with an enemy. I know they had the fight with Janice, but the fight with Janice wasn't against Janice. It was against his nightmare creations. And so a lot of it was just Johnny flying around while he was on fire. And that's not really exactly a proper fight, if that makes sense. I think that there had to be more action in the story. And then beyond that, it was pretty good. So I think that that's really all there is missing here. I think that it's pretty good. I think that it's narratively enjoyable, but it doesn't necessarily have a big climax, and there's really no real story arc here, if that makes sense. Some of the stuff is like, okay, why'd you guys do that? Oh, okay, just because you wanted to. Cool. Like, that's fair, but it's not necessarily satisfying, if that makes sense. So those are my thoughts there. Nearly perfect, just not quite for my taste. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and see you guys later.